All right, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the One Up Sales Development Podcast. For our guest today, we have is this guy. I've been following him for quite some time. This is talking about pre-COVID, and I've been following him from dot to dot and just following his content, and I'm finally able to bring him on board. This individual represents a lot on the side too as well. There's a lot of Asian Americans in the tech scene, but they don't really typically have much of a voice or a vision when it comes to just being there in the tech scene, so to say. I'm just gonna throw it out there. It's true statistics, and it is what it is. But it's all good. Finally, we're able to have this guy on. So this guy has been in sales for quite some time. He worked his way up the ranks. He went through the whole 9 yards. Started out over at LeanData, which we're all familiar about with that tech and SaaS company. And of course, Salesforce. Everyone knows Salesforce. Salesforce was the company that actually embedded and enforced the SDR and VDR role that we all so love and appreciate and are so thankful for what we have today. And, most people that wants to break in tech and SaaS is like, whenever you hear Salesforce or want to work for Salesforce, this is like your dream job. But this individual graduate, moving on from there, please give us a warm welcome for the one and only Mr. Sean Kawaguchi, ISV and Embedded Platform Partnerships over at Workato.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate you having me on here. It's great to meet you as well, and so excited to go over some good topics today and see where this call takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, first things first, just sorry to cut you off, but you look good, man. Loving the blazer. You look great, man. This is audio, but we have a visual form too, which we place on SDR-TV on SDU, but for others what we see, but you look great, man.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Sean, so without further ado, why don't you go ahead and just take it away, man? Please let the audience know who you are and what do you currently do?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so who I am, I'm Sean Kawaguchi, born and raised here in the Bay Area. A little bit about myself. I've been golfing since I was, 14 months old. I mean, people kind of look at me funny when I say that. They're like, you mean 14 years? And I'm like, no, 14 months, got started really early. And kept doing that all the way through college. After college, my whole background was going into accounting and, kind of quickly realized like, hey, accounting, it's, nothing wrong with it. It's a great profession. It just was lacking a little bit of the competitiveness that I was really seeking, having been an athlete for most of my life. And I was just like, all right, well, time to pivot into sales. And so here I am, doing like some partnerships and sales work over here at Workato. As you said, Jax, came from LeanData. I got my start there. Really great place. Moved on to Salesforce, another great company as well. And yeah, very happy where I am at right now. And, just happy to be here on this podcast.
Nice. Sean, welcome to the One Up Sales Dev Podcast, man. We're really happy to have you here. You work your way from the bottom to up and really here to let others know that if you can do it, so can they. So, what is Workato really?
Yeah, so Workato, we work in the integration as a platform, integration platform as a service space. So essentially, going ahead and making sure, companies can go ahead and basically integrate all their different tools within their tech stack, whether it be internally or whether they want to take their platform and integrate, their platform with other systems like, whether it be ERP, whether it be HRIS, like, CRMs, et cetera. So very, fascinating company. I mean, we've hit like a big growth spurt in the last 15 months since I joined. And so it's been a lot of fun, just like, recognizing that the space is getting its, time in the spotlight. And so just really looking to see what we can accomplish just because the sky's the limit. I mean, we've been around for, 8 years now. And yeah, just given, where we're at in the market, I know there's a lot more opportunity. And so we're just chasing after that right now.
Nice. Yeah. And congrats on recent funding, by the way. You guys just got funded again, right? Is that right?
I know. Yeah. So we, I think it's been the last 14 months. I mean, right after I joined, it was about a month later that we raised our Series C, and then we raised our
Ooh.
Series D about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, quickly, went from being a small company to being kind of one of the bigger ones. I mean, hit unicorn status with this most recent funding. And CEO said, "Hey, we got plans to IPO within 2 years." And I was like, "Hey, that's kind of
Ooh.
the dream." I mean, a lot of people, you see that, seen my friends, they went over to Snowflake, Asana, all these great companies that are doing exceptionally well right now. And, I know it'll be our time, pretty soon. So yeah,
Yeah.
just definitely motivated.
Man, congratulations that how exciting working on a rocket ship, man. IPO within
Yeah.
2 years. I can already see that. Hey, quick question. You don't have to answer this, you don't have to, but since that when you joined, did you get any equity?
Yeah, so the companies definitely, I mean, I think most companies go ahead. Yeah, they go ahead and give that the opportunity. I mean,
Oh,
yeah, it's not every company, but at the same time, they're very much like, just the companies want to be fair. And so that's something that you hear about people. Yeah, again, they go ahead and they join a company that goes to IPO, and they're just like, "Hey, this is exciting." To me, it's never really been about the equity. It's been about at least not the financial equity. It's like, hey, where can I put my, print on, on the company? Like, I want to make an impact. And so Workato, we're up to 380 employees, and I feel like I've made, my little mark here, and I just know that that's the goal, is to keep taking that step forward.
yeah, yeah. Congrats again, man. Good stuff. That's always
Yeah.
exciting, and that's like the right mindset too, right? Like, hey, look, it's never about like the money's the equity. It's always gonna be there, but like that, because a lot of reps had that kind of problems too, especially new. We see it all the time, like especially this new. They're always like, okay, what I get, what I get, and then they would base a decision off there rather than what
Yep.
your mindset is. It's like, hey, I want to have an imprint and make a difference and really yeah, put
Yeah,
your imprint in the world, so to say. All right.
definitely.
um
Yeah.
Sean, so uh Ricardo, so when I first saw your title, it's the first I've ever seen, which what we just talked about, ISV. You mentioned it's independent
Yeah.
software vendor, right? Embedded platform partnerships. This
Yeah.
title is specific new to me in your role. Would you mind sharing like what's your responsibility is, and what is it that that an ISV typically does or do?
Yeah, so it's pretty similar to what I was doing at Salesforce. I mean, granted, it's more of a sales role. At the same time, dabble both in having partnerships conversations. We kind of look at that essentially as being like what we call the walk versus our embedded platform, also known as OEM. I mean, more commonly, like, still not like a big term yet in the space, but at the same time, OEM is kind of like going ahead and reselling our platform, giving companies the ability to go ahead and embed their platform, or embed, sorry, our platform within their own platform. And essentially that's where it's like, all right, if you want to integrate with any other platform, so you become that de facto platform in your space, then Workato is a tool for that. On the ISV partnerships side, we do have a great partnerships team here at Workato. Those guys are just hammering it out. It's been awesome to see. So I do my little part to go ahead and have these preliminary, like, I guess, ISV partnerships conversations, given my own background, having had those conversations at Salesforce. And so going ahead and working in tandem with them, being that we are like not not a startup, but like not like, I guess, also a big company either, you do have the ability to go ahead and work very closely with your team and people on other teams as well. So a lot of cross-functional interaction there.
Nice, nice. Okay, so basically, what I'm hearing is that's basically what Ricardo does, right? You guys pretty much integrate almost or pretty much about everything and anything for large enterprises. So for the point where, depending on what their tech stack is, whatever it may be, you guys somehow, some way make them all talk to each other, so that if they were to do one thing, it would all just be like pop, 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 and they don't have to go around and do manual inputting and like having to backtrack. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it's a good description. I mean, granted, this platform itself is very, very complex. At the same time, the beauty of it all is that, yeah, a lot of this stuff is very manual. I mean, And given that we are an enterprise grade solution, we're the company that's really come in to disrupt the space for low to no code technology, which, when people think of iPaaS, they think of like a very enterprise grade, like legacy, like engineering, code heavy kind of space, but we're the new kids on the block. And so that's been a lot of fun, given that our founders have history. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, part of what drew me to Workato was that, our co-founders actually, they were the ones that pioneered the space with TIBCO software. And, I mean, it's been about 20 years since they took TIBCO public. And now, Workato is kind of, I think it's going to be their swan song. I mean, we saw it with MuleSoft, they went ahead, got purchased by Salesforce for a record at the time. Given that we're in the space, it's like, hey, well, we're going to go ahead and see what we can do. It's really, really exciting.
Nice, man. Salesforce always making moves, huh? I mean, I think they purchased Slack recently too, right? Is that right?
They did, yeah.
I mean, acquired Slack.
Yeah, they've made a lot of big purchases recently.
That's crazy, man. Salesforce, that's the big dog right there. It is what it is.
It is. Yeah.
Sean, so you are you Korean? Korean, right?
No, so I'm actually half Japanese, half Chinese.
Oh shit! So, word up.
Yeah, some people think I'm Korean, but yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I was like, this guy kind of look Korean. It's cool. I'm Vietnamese, half Vietnamese, half Chinese. So there it is.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. I'm curious to pick your brain. Just we want to get I want to get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. Asian American, you grew up in the Bay Area, your pops and stuff. You originally was an accountant. When you made the switch, did you go through that typical Asian thing, like, hey, dude, you should be like a doctor or lawyer, like that typical kind of whiplash? Or what did it look like there for you?
No, that's a great question, given that that's, kind of the whole thing that a lot of, Asian kids kind of experience as they're growing up. I was like, I had the freedom of being able to make, whatever my decision was. It was like, all right, if you want to go ahead and be a golfer, you can go take the pro route. If you wanted to go take, go into accounting, banking. I mean, I did go into banking very briefly before accounting. And so my parents were always like, hey, we got your back. Just do whatever makes you happy. And so I consider myself very lucky from that standpoint, because not all of my friends had that option. It was like, oh, you're not going to go be a doctor? Oh, you're not going to be a lawyer? Oh, you're going to go into sales? Like, what's wrong with you? And so, yeah, it's definitely a common thing. I'd say, I hear about it, I've seen it, but, my family being, I want to say, kind of always joke around. I'm like, yeah, I'm third and a half generation, because I had one grandparent that was born in China, but moved here at like 9 years old. And so I'm like, oh, kind of far removed from the whole, from the very cultural aspect of that. And yeah, it gave me a lot of freedom. That very, very grateful for that.
For sure. Okay. So were you originally born was it in Japan or?
No, I grew up.
Sorry, got a lag spike. I think it was my end. Uh-oh, am I lagging? Yeah.
In terms of where I grew up, a little bit there.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry. Looks like I was lagging a bit.
Oh, all good. Yeah, can you? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Actually,
still.
Let me try this. And awesome. So we're resuming now. Thank you for it. Sorry about that lag spike, guys. Sean, were you originally born? Were you in Japan or China, or where were you before you moved on?
Yeah, so I wasn't born like in anywhere foreign. I guess I was born here in California, so like Bay Area. Yeah, I grew up really locally, and so been lucky because I kind of look at it. I was like, well, I was born into the Silicon Valley, and so by all means, people ask me sometimes. They're like, hey, so how do you get into tech? And I'm like, well, I mean, if you want the honest truth, I was born into it, but same time, it took me about 24 years or so to find my way into it as well. But yeah, glad I'm here.
You're here now. It's funny. And that's the great thing about tech. Well, that's also the challenge, right? Like, breaking into tech is whether you're making like a horizontal jump or not, it's 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 pretty difficult sometimes. You don't have like the right help and sometimes experience, so to say. But once you're in, you're basically in.
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. I mean, I honestly, growing up here was like, oh wow, it seems like there's a bubble. It's like either you're in it or you're not. And so, for me, really where I got my start in tech was that when I was doing accounting, I was a consultant, and so I got to go. One of my consultant gigs was working for this company called eFox Software, which is a small, probably about 30-40 person startup over in Palo Alto. And it was a short gig. Being the consulting life, you go from one company to the next, and I kind of like that. I couldn't really shake that taste of being in tech, where I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like these guys are doing this whole software thing. You got the salespeople over there, you got the marketing people, you got the engineers, you got the product, etc. And so I was like, how do I get into that? And it probably took me about another 6 months to a year to kind of find my way in. But once I did, I was like, wow, this is exciting. I mean, and
Oh
it
shit!
really
No
is
way.
continue to get exciting here. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So, what I'm hearing, that's basically how you were exposed to it, right? You're in accounting, you're doing accounting work as an accounting consultant, you said, and then you got this client, and you're like, oh, what the hell is this? And you got sales over there, you got marketing over there, you got software. Hey,
Yep.
man, everyone's wearing is it casual Fridays every day?
No,
free,
right?
free
Yeah.
cater lunch too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it was fun. I mean, definitely fun. I mean, from that perspective, it was funny because when I first got my sales job at LeanData, I showed up like the day of, they're having a company meeting, and there's about like 90, well, I mean, maybe not 90. There were a lot of people packed into a room though. And I walk in full suit, like, it'd been raining. I was late to the my first day because I hit a pothole. And so I show up and I'm like, all right, hey guys, sorry I'm late. And they're like, who's this guy wearing a suit? Why is he wearing a suit? I mean, nobody else is. Even the other new guy, he wasn't. I was like, oh, this is awkward. I realized, hey, it's part of the gig sometimes. I mean, there's conferences, there's reasons that you have to wear a suit, but most of the time it's pretty lax, I'd say.
Nice. Yeah, dude, congrats on the jump. It's funny. I've actually interviewed an individual not too long ago too, another Asian American. His name's Billy B. I'm not sure if you're connected with him yet, but he also
Yeah.
came from accounting background. He was an accountant, and he found his way into tech and SaaS too, similar to you. And then he broke in, and like the rest was history. So I thought that was interesting, accounting background.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of a different culture there, a little more quiet, reserved, but at the same time, I mean, sales, it's like, yeah, a lot of talk and a lot of excitement going on.
Yeah. Um, John, just looking at your background resume, man, you've been in the game. You started
Yeah.
out pretty much as their SDR, BDR, right? As ADR, same thing, right?
Yeah.
In 2017. So that's about like 4 years now. So you're a senior in the game. You're a veteran in the game. Talk to us about your when you made the switch, like to LeanData. So you were exposed to tech. The company we called, you said FFox. So FFox, and you're like, wow, this is what I want to do. How did you successfully make that horizontal jump? Were you applying to different other companies around there? And what, if so, if you got an offer from them too, like how did you narrow it down, and what's your thought process there?
Yeah, no, great question. So, in terms of, I applied to about, I think it was 8 or 9 companies, and some of them weren't even exactly tech companies. I mean, they were technically like tech, but they weren't like, they weren't exactly software. And so I had my 2 top choices. LeanData was at the top. I was like, ping pong, that sounds awesome. I mean, half kidding. But yeah, that was definitely seemed like fun. And I was like, all right, these are my 2 companies I really want to get into. One of them, was for an account manager role, and they were asking me like, hey, do you want to go ahead and can you manage 300 accounts? And I was like, I don't even know what an account is, but I said yes to it. And but then LeanData, they were like, hey, like we're looking for somebody that can come in, be a killer, go ahead and really help take this company to the next level. And so I took that opportunity. I'm lucky because I don't know if I at the time 300 accounts, looking at it back at it now, that would have been a lot to manage, especially right off the bat. But at the same time, LeanData gave me a chance to grow. It gave me a chance to really hone my skills. And what really got me, I think, just got me through that first 6 months was my accountant bred work ethic, which I talk about. That it's like accountants that we work where they work 80 to 100 hours sometimes. And so I look at that and I'm like, well, in sales, why not do the same? You just have to put in some effort. You have to invest in your account selection. You got to hit the phones, you got to hit the emails, and it pays off. You have to be deliberate and you have to be disciplined.
Damn, nice. Man, that's how you do it, man. You came in, they said, hey, look, Sean, we gotta get a killer, man. We gotta get something. How did you really make that mental mind switch? Because I too was accountant major from the first, and the reason why is my whole fucking like half my family who has college degrees are in accounting, man. And it's very systematic and process where you just sit there and just bop, 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 bop. But when it comes to sales, you got to really have this mental switch and mentality, and you always have this growth mindset. Like, how did you do it when you were at LeanData? Because they basically said, hey, Sean, we give you a shot, and they threw you in the woods. Like, what was a few tactics that helped you succeed in that role specifically?
No, totally. In terms of what helped me succeed, so I actually got paired with an account executive at some point. It took us about maybe 4 months to get paired up together. I had reached out to her, like, this is tough. Like, this isn't what I don't have experience here. I could really use your help. And she, her name's Stephanie Bassler. She's been amazing, like an amazing mentor, friend, like just she really helped me get up and running and coached me on what to do, which was there's a lot of strategy involved. You have to obviously put in the work behind it. At the same time, I think what really helped me kind of get into that mentality was just like, hey, I guess what helped me through golf, which was, being resilient, being like patient, like, also being coachable. I mean, just because of the fact that in golf, you could have one bad hole and that can set you back pretty bad, but you also have another 17 holes to make up for that, and so that's where, that combination proved to be pretty good.
Nice. Okay. Let's talk about golf. I know you're a huge golfer, man. I don't know much about golf. My family's in it a lot.
Nice.
They're really into it. They golf like every so often. This full summer, like at Mile Square Park and stuff. And they always tell me, hey, you should try and like hit the range. It's really relaxing. Like, I haven't done that yet, but talk to us about your golfing experience, because I know you mentioned you started since like 14 months of age.
Yeah. So my golfing experience, I don't know. I like to think, like that it was definitely a fun ride. I mean, there's no way around that. At the same time, like when you're working, like when you're really getting off to that early start, I mean, like, you look at Tiger Woods and, they kind of used to, like, there's like articles being like, oh yeah, little Sean Kawaguchi over here, is the next Tiger Woods. And I was like, man, the hype is a little too big. I didn't know it at the time, but that's a lot, to put on a kid's shoulders. Where I was really lucky was that my parents were not like telling me like, oh, you need to be the next Tiger Woods. There was no, they weren't the next, Earl Woods. If you've seen the Tiger Woods documentary where he's just like kind of like a drill sergeant in some ways to his son, it helped Tiger, get to a certain level. At the same time for me, I just always found it to be like a very enjoyable sport. That's where so many of my friends were. It was like just I enjoyed being out in the golf course, still do. And I was just competitive. I wanted to be better than my friends. I mean, we all were going out there with the intent of, crushing each other, but at the same time being like, all right, we can still have a blast doing it. It's not like it's the end of the world if, somebody else beats you. And so kind of balancing that, like that competitiveness and then also just having that enjoyment for the game.
Yeah, nice, nice. Thank you for that explanation. Right, in it for the thrill of it, and really just even at the end of the day, if like, oh man, fuck, dude, I didn't hit number one. I missed. This guy beat me by one appointment set. You still have that specific mindset where it's like, hey, look, maybe we'll try again. Oh, watch out next month. That kind of mentality. And
Exactly.
I'm guessing this is probably why there's a lot of like this is given, right? Like for tech and sales company who goes, all right, Sean, we're looking for candidates who are fresh out of college, 22, 23, 24, who just graduated and want to break into tech. And majority of them, like 9 out of 10, you look at it too, and it's true. They would want someone with what we call a cookie cutter resume, right? Like you were top of your class, you play sports, and I think the reason why, and you perhaps can shed some light on this because you're a veteran, you've been in it, is because sports, that mindset and what you go through to be successful in sports like golfing, it's fucking pretty much like to be successful in sales, like SDR, BDR, to work your way up the ranks. Would you say so?
No, definitely. I mean, you bring in that. I mean, for me, it was like that continuation of my college golf journey. It was kind of like, all right, how do I channel that competitiveness? Like, you're always, looking to better yourself. I mean, granted, I didn't have like, the most glorious resume. I came from a small school, it's like 2,000 people, local to the Bay Area, which is, cool because, people kind of know about it. But really, I mean, private, small school like that, not everyone's heard of it. I came in LeanData, and it was like, oh wow, she has a Cal degree, like he has a UC Irvine degree, she has a University of Pacific degree, like what do I have, like it's like I was kind of leaning on my ability to talk and my golf background and my accounting degree. And so it's all about like the story that you articulate, like going into Salesforce, I didn't have like it wasn't like, oh, Sean worked at Facebook or some big corporation. I had to go ahead and come up with my own story. And that's a big part of sales is just going ahead and being able to say like, hey, like not to sell yourself short, not to oversell yourself, but just to be like honest, like, and that's where you can really you can kind of take it or leave it. If somebody doesn't like you, then something to be taken personally. But I think each of us have a very unique story to tell, and I think that's something that we should all, like, if you want to go into sales, that's a great place to start, is by telling your story.
Yeah, right. Man, I agree with you. I think like one of the most powerful thing you can do really is share your story and be real. And that's the problem. Like not everyone's willing to do it because like, I'm gonna get these whiplashes. No, it's a failure, and it's embarrassing and stuff like that. But if you really stick to core for it, and then later down look back like how you did with your story, right? It's like, hey, look, it broke me, but then it made me. Let's say, yeah. Sean, I want to just, how are we doing on time so far? I know we hit 30. We just hit.
I'm doing fine. I mean, what about yourself?
Sweet. No, doing well. Thanks. Want to pick you a little bit more, pick your brain on some few things. So you went to Salesforce, man, BDR, ISV OEM strategic partnerships, like Salesforce, like, it's like fucking dream job. Like I remember when I first heard about sales development, I'm like, man, fuck, I wish Salesforce was down here in Orange County for SDR BDR, but it's only in San Francisco, Chicago, and I think it's somewhere, I think it was New York or something. So and they have AE down here. I'm like, fuck, you know what? You were in Salesforce, man, like and then you made the jump. Like what's the story there? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, in terms of going Salesforce, that was like, my quote unquote dream job. I mean, still, I think for a lot of people, you look at it and, you join the company and they're like, hey, we have a lower acceptance rate than Harvard. And you're like, wow, that's like really cool. Like I earned my way into here. At the same time, I think, it's kind of like, I look at it, there's a lot of great colleges, everyone wants to go to USC or go to Harvard or Stanford type of thing. And, you look at that and it's like, it's great. Like a lot of people that go to those schools makes them really happy. Same thing for me, like going to Salesforce made me really happy. At the same time, I also realized that for me, working for a bigger corporate company like Salesforce, given that it has a status and reputation as being, like the biggest company in SaaS, like has a fantastic reputation, like great culture, etc. For me, what the difference was is that, trying something new. I love partnerships. I think it's definitely like a very valuable, job. I learned a lot of great skill sets. At the same time, there's just to me nothing like working for a smaller company where you just really, I mean, my first company, I knew everybody there. Like pretty much would go over, I could walk into the engineering room, go talk to them. It was like, all right, hey, let's go grab beers with, like the product team or something like that kind of thing. I didn't realize how much I took that for granted. And so when I went
Mm.
to Salesforce, much bigger company, you talk to somebody cool and then you never see them again. It's like going to a much bigger college, which I just never had that experience. I wanted to try it though. And so that's, when I left, I was like, you know what? I really want to go back into a smaller company. I want to go to a place where I really know everybody. And that's, what I found at Workato is I'm like, all right, last night I was sitting on Slack working till like, 11 a.m. But here I was talking to my colleagues in Singapore and talking to my, my other colleagues in the Philippines. And I was like, man,
Oh, damn.
this is what makes me like, this is just what I get enjoyment out of. At Salesforce, there's nothing wrong with it. Fantastic company. I just didn't really I didn't really know anybody there. I knew people like within my own org, but the App Exchange, it's just kind of like, yeah, like I said, you run into somebody, you're like, oh yeah, we become fast friends. Oh, oops, forgot to get their number and their name. Now I never. And it's just kind of like, I don't know. For me, it's like, people may not, see that as like, oh, is that really good reason? But for me, I've never been somebody that's like, all right, I'm going to go here and stay here just because of, the status and the reputation. It's just like, I kind of do as I please. I mean, and so I think that's just something, as you go further into your career, you kind of like realize like, you don't care about like some of this like things like, what do other people think? You just kind of learn to think, hey, what makes you happy? And that's,
Nice.
what I think being in golf, that really taught me that as well, because golf's an individual sport and a team sport. So you kind of operate independently and you just, somebody's like, why is he taking out a driver on this hole? I used to do that all the time. My coach would be like, Sean, why are you taking out a driver? And I'm like, because I want to do it. It's going to make me happy,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like how I approach my life.
Nice. Nice. Man, I fucking love that, man. You're familiar with Jack Ma, right? Alibaba, old guy,
Yeah.
Chinese guy.
Yep.
I listened to a lot of his motivational speeches and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
one of the great things that he threw out there, he says, look, when you're in like your early 20s, you should really join a company that's already fully established, because when you do that, you learn processes, things are already set in place. Hey, Sean, welcome aboard. Here's your job title, and here's what you're responsible for, and you literally are responsible for that and that
Yeah.
only. There's a process, is the engine in place. But he says, but as you get a little bit older down the road, you should start and work for a smaller company, or like similar like a startup or something like Workato, because
Yeah.
when you do that, you learn the passion and you learn the why behind it, and you connect with individuals that you wouldn't be able to connect with, like give and take Salesforce, because the bigger the harder, like what you just mentioned, like, oh damn, yeah, I met this guy Sean last week, man, this guy's so cool, but see ya.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I just love the interpersonal, water cooler kind of interactions.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So walk over to your CEO and just say, hey, what's going on? Like, oh, what are you having for breakfast right now? That kind of thing. It's just fun to me. Like, it just gets me really pumped up in the morning because I'm like, hey, I want to go to war with this guy. It's like, I know he's a CEO, but he doesn't treat me like I'm, like this guy that's lower on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Not saying that like anybody, other CEOs do, but at the same time, I saw Mark Benioff once at Salesforce and it was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, it's not like I could just go walk up to Mark and be like, hey man, like, what are you eating for breakfast type of thing. And
Yeah.
in a conversation to start off my morning. And so that kind of like those good vibes bring a lot of like energy and just, it's like, it's really hard to measure that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I mean, I'm no like executive leader or anything, but you think about that because I think of things like this a lot. I mean, we're humans, right? We can only give so much at specific time, and you can't give it all to everyone, And I guess that's the challenge of it. But perhaps maybe one day that's why they have like employee engagement platforms and shit like that. But fuck it, whatever, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Sean, so before we start getting to wrap things up here, there's something I wanted to chat about, man. And only if you be open to it. I know you've experienced a loss recently, and our condolences to you. Is this something you'd be open to chatting about?
No, of course. Yeah. I've been pretty open about it. I kind of look at it and it's like, all right, I've gone through a lot, like especially since September. Like it's just so many things have happened. I mean, obviously the biggest loss being my dad back in end of October, very, unexpected. About a month and a half after that, lost my grandmother, and she was my grandparent. And, so given, this happening, it really kind of like it turns your life like on its head overnight, and you're just kind of stuck scrambling. You're like, all right, what's happening here? You start questioning different things like, who am I? Like, why am I, what went wrong? Like there's a lot of different factors that come into play, when you lose like somebody that's so important in your life, and then, it's compounded by another, major loss in your life. At the same time, it's also one of those things where for me, like I'm somebody that, like it definitely is to this day still very, very devastating. But I realize like, hey, it's not going to change anything. Like, it's not me going and, being upset about it isn't going to bring him back. And so, while I have had plenty of tough times so far, it's like we're human. My dad was just such like an instrumental figure in my life. Like he was like my best friend. And so, I looked at it and I was like, well, I'm going to take some time off from work. Like I'm going to really figure out like, what it is that I need to do to kind of get myself, back like to feeling, like really full. Because, when you lose a person like that so important in your life, you just feel it's like somebody just, took a part of you and just threw it away. And you're kind of like, wait, how do I, it's like somebody took away your left leg and you're like, wow, like now I'm standing, like I can barely stand. And so for me, I really took a couple months off. Very gracious, or grateful to Workato because, yeah, they gave me the time. They're like, take as much time as you need. We're here to support you. And so, I really recognize like that. Hey, in these 2 months, I've got to figure out what it is I'm going to do to make myself move forward. Because being the oldest child in my family, it's like I still have 2 other siblings, and I've got my mom, and I've got, other family members and friends that are really stepping up to the plate. I realize like, hey, I'm at the end of the day still, like one of the legs on the table, as you'll say. And so that being said, I was like, well, this is, the biggest test of resilience I will probably ever face, given that it just happened so suddenly, given, like that I'm still pretty young. Like I was like, well, you can't just sit here and, be upset. Like, it's okay. It's going to happen. You're going to have tough days. At the same time, you need to get back to working out. And so my colleague from LeanData, my friend James Crane, I texted him, was like, hey man, it's been really hard on me. I'm really struggling here to just try to like, to kind of pick myself up. And he told me, he's like, hey, what happened? He's like, you were working out twice a day for like, 100 and was like, I think it was like 110 days. He's like, you were working out twice a day for 110 days. What happened to that, Sean? It's like, and I was like, well, I mean, I kind of fell off the bandwagon. I mean, life kind of just, tackled me out of left field. And, he told me, he's like, hey, well, I know that Sean, before is still there.
Yeah.
And so go ahead and, get back to working out, like doing your old 75 hard program that you had done before, working out twice a day, like no drinking, like all that other stuff.
I heard about that program.
Yeah, it's hard because I failed the first time after like 60 days, and I did it like for 75 more days, and I finally completed it, and I felt like as good as I've ever felt in my life. Thanks. But I leaned on that very heavily. It was like, all right, great endorphins, you feel better when you're working out. And so I made a point to really go ahead and start working out again and doing that twice a day. Now I'd actually quit drinking like almost a year ago now. And so that wasn't a problem, but just making sure that I was building structure back into my life, focusing on work, hanging out with my friends, my family, like, really spending time to go ahead and be kind to myself. But again, it's just one of those challenges where it's like, you never wish it upon your worst enemy. And so you just have to kind of like, it's in a make or break situation. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim, or sometimes people float. But for me, I still don't really understand, the whole process like of grieving. I know there's different stages and such. And so I've gone through each of those stages, and, like in full transparency, it's been a very, very difficult, like, last few months, but I'm also practicing gratitude and, just really realizing that, hey, if I can, make it through this, I can make it through anything. Like I've always thought of myself as being very resilient, but it's not until you get put to the most real tests, possible, that you become like as resilient as you, realize now. And so, yeah, I was doing 75 hard, like, was doing that up until a few days ago. And so it definitely helped me get through this. I mean, work, having the support of my coworkers, I just had to figure out like, all right, how do I get back to being focused? I mean, of course, there's just things you can't really control, but at the same time, you just have to kind of put one foot forward, just like the whole, concept of walking, like kids learning how to walk and then learning how to run. I saw it as, yeah, let me put one step forward. And then the next thing you know, like eventually I'll be running. And, I kind of feel like I'm running right now because I feel like I'm firing on all cylinders again. But at the same time, I'm just conscientious of the fact that, yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's, you just like anybody that's lost, a loved one, like knows how that feels. But at the same time, it hits a little harder when it's like, an immediate family member. And, if it's your best friend, like I'm very lucky that I had, my dad as my best friend. And so I'm very, it allows me to be a lot more grateful for that relationship. I have no regrets. I just look at it as like, hey, I'm grateful. I'm in a good place still, he's still here with me, like that kind of thing. You just have to kind of keep reinforcing that and just going ahead and marching on.
Yeah. Wow, dude. Kudos to you, man. I can't imagine how much pain you be going through.
Yeah.
It's one thing to lose a family member. It's another to lose them in a compound interest style. But I think what really hits home hard is if it's really a lot closer, as your best friend, because it's more than your dad. He's your best friend, right? He taught you this, he taught you that, and I'm imagining he probably taught you golf. Is that right? Pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like at some point, I was like, all right, dad, we got to, I mean, he made a decision because I was like, I think I was 4 or 5 when I started working my golf coach.
Yeah.
And so he brought a golf coach into the picture and was like, all right, Sean's obviously got a knack for the game. Let's make sure he gets proper coaching. And he really, I mean, my dad he was always at my side, like not like like hovering over me. Like he wasn't a helicopter kind of parent at all, but he was just like, hey, well, Sean can't drive himself to the course, so he's got to get there somehow. And so, and my dad, given that he had his own business, like he was working like a lot of times over 100 hours a week. Like
Oh wow.
he was an accountant himself, and he cared a lot about his clients, but he
Yeah.
cared more about his family. And so, you'd take days. I mean, there were times during the summer where we'd probably go to 45 tournaments, and it's like 45 days out of what is it, like 90 days during the summer. And he's driving me to like those. And then it's like, all right, well, I'm going back to work after this. And
Oh
you're like,
wow.
man, you're crazy. You're putting in like 100 hours a week and you're taking your kids to go, partake in golf tournaments and go like take us, to practice and everything. And same with my mom. I mean, just incredibly grateful for them instilling me. I mean, he was also the one that kind of guided me into sales. He was like, yeah,
Nice.
he was like, I was going to tell you to get out of accounting like in probably a year. He's like, I just wanted to let you figure it out yourself. And I kind of beat him to that chase, but he was like, he wasn't going to push me. He was just going to be like, hey, here's, what I think it would be naturally what you're naturally suited for. He's like, you've got the personality, you've got the work ethic. he's like, I know you well enough to know that you'll be a lot happier in sales. And, if that's going to make him happy, or if that was going to make me happy, that would have definitely made him happy.
Nice, nice. You actually kind of beat me to it, because I was gonna ask you, like, what's he like? And it seems to me like he's resilient, right? And that's where you learned it from. Like, no matter what happens, I'm gonna have to push forward. Like, life's gonna punch me in the face, but I'm gonna push forward. And no matter what, I have to do it, because I got some siblings. I have to set the right example.
Yeah.
Even if you fell off that 75 hard, right? Like, that 75 hard is tough. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there who fucking doesn't talk about. It's like, I'm gonna give it a shot. You say whatever you want, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, 75 hard is fucking tough. I mean, I'm going through some stuff too, but yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Great. Yeah. It's a hard one. I mean, but highly suggest it, to anybody, not just you, but
Yeah,
else, to go ahead and just provide structure and, like go ahead and really, it'll make you feel resilient, because at the end of the day, it's like, man, when you're going out, like, cause you have to do an outdoor workout, you got to do an indoor workout. And you're just like, some days you're like, man, it's only day 25. What? Like, how am I going? And yeah, it just teaches you that mental toughness that,
yeah,
yeah, it just doesn't just come naturally for people.
no kidding. Sean, how old was your dad?
So he was 65, so not very old. I mean, like, but he led, a life, like a very fulfilling life. Like, I mean, some of the stories that he would tell me, I was like, wait, are you for real? Like, and he'd be like, yeah, yeah. I was like, wait, what? Ran into Michael Jordan at a bar, like, you like whatever. Like, he had all these like crazy stories. He's like, yeah, I used to go up to Tahoe, I get up there like in an hour. I was like, Dad, it takes us like 6 hours to get there. And he's like, well, back then there was no traffic. And it's like he was like, I was driving my sports car, and I was like, man, you're a legend, like that kind of thing. I mean, he was always just very much like, it's just like an outstanding guy. I mean, he touched a lot of people's hearts. Like a lot of friends are like clients, and yeah, family members are like, man, like your dad was one of the best and funniest guys. And
Yeah,
sometimes they'll tell me, they'll be like, hey, you talk like your dad. I mean, I found myself being like, man, like just the way I talk is just a lot like him. And I continue to try to carry all these traits that he passed on to me.
yeah. Hey, man, I just want to say something. I'm sure, he'd be proud of you. I'm sure he was proud of you, and for you to finally find that spark in you and to push forward and put up and push through. I'm sure he's really happy to see that you
Yeah.
finally taking the right direction, despite of the pain and hurt that loss took.
Yeah, no, of course, I appreciate that. Good words there.
Yeah. Sean, just before we wrap it up right here, I wanted to ask you something, and if you don't have to answer for it, it's okay. A lot of reps, SDR that I chat with too in this role, that's just life, right? We deal with loss, like myself
Yeah.
included. I had a buddy that recently just died from a seizure.
Oh,
Um,
sorry.
yeah. And when it comes to things like this, like, well, and I've been thinking about too, is, it's kind of like also taking a loss, or, maybe you got fired, or it's life events, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's stages of loss. Like, first it's like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
sad and pissed, and then it comes to the point where you get acceptance, where you finally accept it and say, okay, this is it. Now I gotta take the next step. Like, would you mind sharing? You don't have to, but like, your stages, like how did you cope with the loss, and when was it to the point where you're like, okay, I accept it now, and this is what is important, and I'm moving towards that.
Yeah, yeah. So no, great question. I mean, for me, given that it happened so suddenly, that, of course was very just like devastating. Like I was probably, like there's like the five, or I guess they call it now the 6 stages of grief. But essentially for
Uh,
me, it was like at first it was like, man, like, it was like I've never experienced depression in my life. And, that for those first few days, first week or whatever, it was just like, man, how do you even get up and, go ahead and wake up in the morning and go ahead and go about your day? Like that's hard. Like that was a very scary time in my life. Probably one of the, yeah, maybe the scariest, because you're just like, yeah, how do I just keep moving forward. I actually moved on to the acceptance part pretty quickly, which people were surprised because, I kind of went from being like, man, like this is just like, what do I do, to being just very much like, hey, yeah, talking to people, and they're like, wait, why is he not crying? Like, why is he, like my girlfriend was like, hey, why is Sean, like, why are you so, I guess like, yeah, why are you just kind of like almost like it didn't happen? And, I had to tell her and like tell my friends and my, my family, I was like, I'm hurting. It's just that I'm just kind of in shock right now. And so I'm processing things. And, I look at that and, I think from an outsider's perspective, it's concerning to see that, about somebody. For me personally, I found that it was like, hey, it's like the sooner I start accepting it, the better. Like, the whole like aspects of like people get angry about it, people get depressed, there's different like emotions that they go through. And for me, I was just very grateful. Like I was very grateful. I was just very focused on being resilient. I was like, I don't want to let this, define me. Like I don't want, because some people, they lose a loved one, they, immediately go and hit the bottle and they're like, all right, like next thing you know, they're just like 3 years down the road and they're like, man, I can't believe I spent, the last 2 years just drinking like crazy. Like, was that a healthy response? No. And you're like, but you don't have control over that sometimes. It's just such a devastating situation. And so for me, I was like, man, how do I pull myself up from this? Like, how do I keep going back? Like, I realized, well, I'm going to take a little time off from work. I'm going to be with my family. I'm going to do things for myself. I'm going to take time to like, to process it and just deal with it in a way like where it's just like talking to people proved to be very therapeutic. Like, I get good vibes from from my friends. I think it's just being an extrovert. You kind of like pick up on people's, good energy and you take it, and so that's what was really helping was I was telling people all the stories about my dad. I was telling them, like about how great, like of a person he was. And I found it really hard to be, like too, like breaking down or like, just because a lot of people, like I said, were really expecting me to be more like, yeah, just down in the dumps. But the reality of it was, yes, inside I still am hurting really bad. But at the same time, I just kind of like was like, well, life has to go on. I mean, what would my dad want? He'd want me to keep going. I mean, he'd be like, yeah, he's like, hey, I'm still here. Like, maybe not physically, but at the same time, you just have to just keep being resilient. And so, yeah, there's no like, right or wrong way. It's like you can, some people are angry right off the bat. Some people are, accepting of it. Some people are, like, they call it like negotiating, where they're like, why, like, what can I do to get him back or get her back? And it's just, there's no proper way of going through, like the six stages of grief. You just have to kind of let it come at you, recognize like, hey, when is something getting unhealthy? And then just kind of go from there and just work your way through it. But just don't be too hard on yourself. I mean, that's the advice I'd give you or anybody else that's going through it, is that for me, I was like, man, I feel bad because I'm letting my team down, like by not being at work. I feel bad because I'm not necessarily emotionally available for my family, like in those first couple of weeks, or and you just realize like, no, you got to take time for yourself. You got to realize that, hey, you went through something that not a lot of people go through. You got to realize that, hey, this was your best friend, this was your father, this was somebody that really left a big hole in your life. And now it's not like you're gonna go patch it up all of a sudden. You just have to go ahead and make sure that you really take the time to go ahead and just be kind to yourself.
Wow. Sean, thank you so much for sharing that, man. That is really important. I can't express how important it really is when things like this happen. I'll tell you, I have a cousin, right? His, he's an older cousin of mine. I'm not gonna say his name. His dad, which is my uncle, passed it's like 18 years ago, and he's still not over it. He's stuck in there still, and he's like, every time when at a family party, when he would overdrink a lot, he would always bring up the same shit. Oh man,
Yeah.
wish my dad here, wish my dad that, remind me is like that. And it seems to me like no matter how much we try to help, and it's been many times, I think he's one of that stages from 1 to 6. He's stuck somewhere in there. So
Yeah.
kudos for you for recognizing the stages and really to pushing it forward. Although just it's a loss. It's something. It's not. It's like you got. It takes time, but really happy to see that you found your way out of that hole and you're heading towards the right direction, man.
Nice.
So, yeah, I want to know we're here for you, man.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, Jax.
Yeah. Hey, what was his name? Your dad.
Yeah, my dad's name was Glen. Yeah.
Glenn.
Yeah, yeah. He had, a rock star mustache. Yeah, just a legend. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, did he have like a favorite number or anything like that? Do you have no or?
No favorite number. I mean, like being an accountant, I mean, I think he just saw too many numbers. Like it was like, okay, yeah, no favorite number. But I mean, I'll just say like he kind of had a penchant for living life on the edge a little bit, whether it was like driving fast cars, going skiing, really fast, whatever. Like he always had this kind of like daredevilish, like this kind of like aura about him that you're like, man, Dad, like you just aren't afraid to take chances. Like, and that's where I was lucky because it took me a little time to adopt that. Given that when you're younger, you're like, man, I go do this and I get in trouble. Then like it's kind of scary to get in trouble when you're like a kid. But as I got older, I was like, you know what? Take chances. It's like if you're gonna go invest in the stock market, just like you can be, you got to be okay losing. Or if you go into sales, you got to go ahead and know that you're gonna face rejection. And I think that really that kind of mentality is what has helped me so far. Just given that my dad just wasn't afraid. I mean, even the
Resilience.
I don't think there was only time I ever heard him admit that he was scared was when some guy chased my sister and I and my dad when we were like, I don't know, like 8 and my sister was like 4. And so he said that was the only time he's ever been scared in his life. Or I mean,
We're chasing guys?
Yeah, just like some in San Francisco. Yeah, it was
fuck,
like
crackhead.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But it's just one of those things where I was just like, man, my dad, he was just like just extremely proud to be his son. And it's like I want to be as fearless as him. I mean, I know it's like big shoes to fill, but I'm also realizing that hey, you don't have to fill those exact shoes. You also have to carve your own path, which him and my mom, very supportive of that.
Yeah, for sure. Sean, if I know we took a lot of your time, but I just want to ask you just like a few more questions. That's all right. If someone was to ask you, all right, Sean, what's the most memorial story you have of you and your pops? What would that be?
Oh, that's a great question. So, you said memorable stories. I'd say the most memorable one was in 6th grade. So do you remember the movie $1 Million Baby?
It rings a bell.
Yeah, so it was like it was Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Hilary Swank, and so we were basically my dad used to work with like Clint's guys, like so we'd get on a movie here and there, and $1 Million Baby was being filmed, and they're like, well, do you want to come down to LA and be on the set for a few days?
Oh, no fucking way.
Yeah, it was a cool experience. My dad was like, all right, Sean, we're going down there. Me being 12, I didn't fully appreciate the experience, but what I do remember was like being on the set. This was my 6th grade graduation present. And, like I made it like only one day before I got like tired and grumpy. But yeah, it was just cool because my dad was like over there. He's like, Clint Eastwood walks over to us and was like, hey guys, like, how's it going? Like, he's like, hey,
no fucking way.
Yeah. And Morgan Freeman, like, we're just talking about
Freeman too?
Yeah. Morgan, my dad was like, yeah, but my dad was just so chill about it. And I think that was really cool. Like that was one of my favorite things was like when we meet celebrities, like my dad would just be like, I would be all starstruck. Like my dad would be like, he'd just treat them like they were another person. Like we saw Steph Curry at the golf course and my dad just started talking about a mutual friend of theirs. And I'm like, Dad, you realize this is Steph Curry. Like, are you not starstruck?
Oh, wow.
I was like, Dad, can we get a picture of the 3 of us? And my dad's like, I don't do that with celebrities. And I was like, I still wish I had that picture, like I wish we had taken it. But I also respected the fact that my dad was just so cool and collected. He was just like, hey, they're another person like us. Like, and so in a way, like, you know, people ask, like, sometimes they're like, who would be your dream foursome in golf? And, you know, like, that's a pretty common question from people ask golfers. For me, I mean, my dream foursome would be my dad, Steph, and I don't know, I'd have to think of who the fourth one would be. I mean, maybe Tiger Woods or somebody. But at the same time, you know, it was like, that was just like, those kind of experiences are very memorable. Like, you know,
Nice.
driving to the golf course, like, it's hard to say like which one was the most memorable, but that was like a really cool experience. And just seeing, like, yeah, you know, there's just something to be said about somebody that can just be so cool and collected, like, around, like, in those kind of situations.
Nice, nice. There it is. There it is. Thank you for sharing. That's why, you know, you're a leader where you're at right now in the space. And, you know, you picked up, I believe you picked that trade up from your pops, man, you know, for someone to bring the kids around, and he already knows how special and that the other people from across the side are, you know, he doesn't, you got to have on a poker face. It's like when you're in sales and then you have like a big, you know, ACV going on, a big potential opportunity. You can't just go up and just blow up like, oh my God, I can't wait. Like, hey, I know this guy, I've been waiting and stuff like that, you know, and really just sit there with a poker face and to be able to read from across the room. Man, I think that's what you got it from Mr. Glen Kawaguchi, man. That's awesome, dude.
Thanks. Yeah.
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 Sean, I know it's a little noisy here because, you know, I'm 31 years
Oh,
old,
all good.
home and stuff, whatever. But your dad was 65 years old, right? You wanna, and I wanna do something too, you know, in kind of in his honor. Would you mind want to do like a 65-second moment of silence for him?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'll just go ahead and hit that now. And before I do, are you Catholic?
I am not Catholic, but my mom is, though. So
I'm Catholic, so I'll just say a few prayers for him for that, man.
I appreciate it.
No worries, man. Okay. And dear God, for all we hear, please rest in peace for Mr. Sean Kawaguchi. For he has a son that's he ought to be proud of. You taught him everything that he has and does today. You ought to be remembered, and thank you for everything you have done. He ought to be most proud of you. Amen. Rest in peace for your dad and your grandma, man.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, my mom appreciates that too. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Sean, without further ado, let's just wrap it up. Is there any special things you do too? And if so, what's the best way to reach out to you? Take it away, man.
Yeah, special thank yous. I mean, like, obviously to my dad, yeah, and my mom too, and, you know, the rest of my family, like my brother and sister. They've all been, you know, tremendous, like, supporters of me, and they've really, I wouldn't be here, you know, where I guess I wouldn't be here without them. And so, yeah, definitely, you know, my family also, yeah, girlfriend for supporting me through this time too. I mean, like, my friends, I mean, so many of them, you know, it's like, you know, whether it just be my high school friends, my grade school friends, my college friends, golf friends, sales friends, I mean, all across the board. You know, I don't want to, yeah, really call out too many people because it's, you know, not fair, but I will say, you know, like, my dad was the one that got me into sales. And then, you know, like, my friend Stephanie Bassler, like, helped me, you know, really, she helped me just get much better. And, you know, my friends also, like my friend James, like, who I mentioned, helped me really kind of get out of that, you know, like, tough spot where he said, like, hey, the whole working out thing. I mean, just to name a few. Obviously, definitely more people out there that have made a huge impact. I mean, your support as well. You know, like, a lot of people have been reaching out, and I just haven't really, I've tried to, you know, get back to people, but at the same time, it's a lot. And so, you know, support's been overwhelming. Best way to reach me at is LinkedIn, email. Well, LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. Yeah, Sean Kawaguchi. And otherwise, always open to chatting with people, and just because I love talking. Yeah, I love learning, love sharing. And so appreciate your time, Jax. Thanks for having this podcast.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on and sharing your story, man. There's a lot of people out there who goes through life, as we call it, and they just don't really have that stepping stone, or like you mentioned, walking us through the 6 stages of grief. So thank you for sharing, and God bless your pops, your grandma, and thanks for hopping on the One Up Sales Development podcast, baby.
Yeah, no, of course, man. Yeah, I'll have to talk soon.
Yeah.